welcome to our lecture series on marketing management, and in this very series of marketing management I'll be telling you about rural marketing today, and this is going to be part 1 of our lectures on the topic of rural marketing. As we all know that India being a country of villages, where we have been talking about the significant number of villages, it becomes very pertinent for a marketer to understand what exactly we mean by the rural India. The term rural or the rural marketing is very much relevant and pertinent for a marketer to understand. So, we will be telling you about how do we define this entire term of rural marketing, and then what are the key differences in rural and urban markets. That is something which we need to understand before we try to enter in the market and decide our target market, do the segmentation, targeting and positioning. So, we need to understand what exactly we mean by the rural market and what are the key differences between the rural and urban. And in between there is another term which comes in front of us, is called rurban, which is a synthesis or combination of rural and urban, and we call it the rurban market. So, we will be telling you about the traits of rural customers, what are the challenges in rural marketing, and everything which we need to understand, which we need to know about the rural marketing is going to be our point of discussion in this very lecture of mine. So, with this as an agenda of today's discussion, let me tell you what exactly we mean by the rural marketing and the rural market in general. So, rural markets in India, they have actually as I told you, they have significant importance, primarily because the majority of our population is based in rural India. Earlier we have been in the previous census we talked about India to have more than 6,75,000 villages, which has now been reduced to 6,50,000 roughly, which means there is an increment in terms of urbanization, and because of this increasing urbanization, some of the villages now they have been brought into the urban setup, and that is why the number of villages have been now reduced to 6,50,000 plus, but still that number is very much significant for a marketer, and it is something which we can't ignore. So, one can easily understand that rural India's market potential is enormous and huge, given that more than 60% of the total population of India still lives in approximately more than 6,50,000 villages. So, that is why we say that the soul of India is actually living in villages, it is found in villages. So, India, if you really wish to understand India, you have to visit the villages of the India of this country, so that you should understand what exactly we mean by the India and what kind of diversity we are witnessing. So, there are certain improvements in terms of infrastructure, increased information technology usage, which we call as ICT usage, the widespread use of smartphones. Of course, now we are finding that there is at least one cell phone, one smartphone in the hand of everyone almost, that you can witness and you can see. And we have now informed rural customers as compared to the erstwhile situation where the rural customers they lacked in information, they were not having sufficient information. Now we have informed rural customers, and most importantly what matters is a more progressive and reform focused rural environment, which has actually contributed to the changes in the rural market environment during the past decade. So, the pace of change, if we try to understand the pace of change in last 10 years, it has been very significant. So, from 1947, if we start counting from the year of our independence, until this 2014, I would take as an year. So, till then whatever progress was there, that was fine, but when the kind of significant change we are witnessing in last 10-11 years, that is really remarkable, because the kind of connectivity we are having in rural India now, it is actually representing or redefining or transforming the entire rural setup in the market. So, even the marketers, they are finding it more challenging, cause the things have changed at a very fast pace, and they have to be in sync with all those latest changes or developments. So, keeping that in mind, we all understand that there is a famous saying by Mahatma Gandhi, that the soul of India lives in its villages, and the statement is really true. It is quite true, because agriculture has always been the mainstay of mankind, and with the time, as advancements happens in other areas, mainly due to service sector or the industrial and manufacturing sector, migration started happening to the cities. So people started migrating from their villages to the cities in the hope of having the employment opportunities, because there have been a problem of seasonal unemployment in agriculture sector. But still India is being known as an agrarian economy, and the agriculture still remains as the mainstay of the human beings, and we all understand the significance of the agri business or agriculture. So one could attempt this small exercise in one's home with their parents and relatives. One can very easily ask them, and that will help them in tracing the origin of their family, because each one of us in one way or the other we have been connected to at least one or the other villages. And also it will help us in relating to the entire discussion which we are going to have in this very lecture more efficiently and effectively. So if you wish to understand that what was there in the rural India, what is there in the rural India, we need to understand that somehow our point of origin is in one way or the other from at least one of the villages of this country. So even if you are in the metropolitan cities, you are residing, you are doing your job, but your roots are still there in those villages. So this actually makes this entire discussion very much relevant and very much fascinating also. It becomes very attractive discussion for us that within this country we have this much of diversity, that there is a rural India and there is also an urban India, and there have been a discussion between the India and Bharat, but now we consider this entire country to be Bharat because that divide have been taken care by the government in a very significant manner, in a very planned manner. So gone are the days when we used to say that there is a huge rural urban divide. Divide is still there, but it is not that huge as it used to be. So we have to now understand what is there in rural India. It is a very diversified construct with people of different income strata. Within the rural India, you would find that people are hailing from different income backgrounds. Some of them they are the owners of the land, and the others they are actually working on those lands. So of course their income is bound to differ significantly. So we have people from people of different income strata in rural India. Second is there is most important construct here is that the different kind of housing types. We have different kind of housing types there in rural India, and although the agriculture is the primary occupation, yet some alternate occupations which are non-agriculture in nature, they are also on the rise. So within the rural India there is some alternate occupations which are there in place now, and people cause of the seasonal unemployment, they have been resorting to this kind of occupations, so that their earning is constant and consistent, and they don't run short of their what you call as their income or the disposable income which they are supposed to have in their hands. Next is penetration of digital and smartphones are actually on the rise, and this is something which is very important, and this has actually made the rural customers also very much information rich. And they are not time poor like people who are residing in metropolitan cities. They are information rich and they have lot of time to explore the different options. They collect data from different sources. So there is a penetration of digital and smartphones which is actually on the rise, which has become another trait of rural India. And if we talk about their cooperation, there is an existence of what we call as SHGs, that is self-help groups. They are a visible entity in rural India. You can find these self-help groups. They are very much effective also, and people are resorting to the kind of help they are extending. They are actually resorting to their services, their facilities, their informations, and these SHGs, they are actually connected locally with the villagers, and that is why they become more effective. So if you have to understand the rural India, these traits are something which we must know, that now it is not that diverse, it is not that divide which we have been talking about, that divide is now to some extent it has been filled up by the efforts of the government. But still, since we have to cater to this vast population which is residing in the rural India, and that too spread across more than 6,50,000 villages. Imagine the magnitude of the work which any government has to do is so high, is so vast, that it will take much of time to bring them at par with the urban facilities. And that is why we are here to talk about the rural India and rural marketing. So there is something very unique about the rural India, and that is something which we need to understand if we really wish to cater to the requirement of rural India. So we have to first define what exactly we mean by the term rural, because whenever I enter into the class and start this topic as a point of discussion, students ask me in a very obvious manner that, sir, what exactly we mean by the term rural, how do you define the term rural? There are different definitions given by different entities. There is one definition given by RBI, another definition given by some of the leading multinational companies. But I thought of taking the definition which is more authentic and which comes from the census of India, because it is the entity which is actually conducting the census, and the census of India actually defines the rural market. So we have to understand how do we define a rural market. So the census of India has defined the term rural as any area with the population density of 400 people per square kilometers. 400 people per square kilometers, and where at least 75% of the male working population is engaged in agriculture. And the third condition is where there exists no municipality or board in that specific area. So if any particular area fulfills all three conditions, then of course that is supposed to be defined as a rural area, as compared to what we have been discussing in terms of urban India. So if any of these conditions are not fulfilled, then of course that area would belong to urban area. For instance, if a particular area exists, a particular area is operating under a municipality or under a municipal corporation, then of course it is supposed to be called as an urban area. It is supposed to be called as a city, not as a village. So 75% of the male working population is engaged in agriculture. There exists no municipality or municipal corporation or any area with a population density of 400 people per square kilometer. If these three conditions are fulfilled, it means that area is a rural one. So this is the most authentic definition which I could find with regard to defining rural, the term rural. So this definition provides a working sense of how you can understand any rural market. You can very easily work on it, that how do we define and how do we go to a particular rural market, how do we define that yes, this area is a rural market and this one is the urban one. So if the municipality or municipal corporation exists, it automatically becomes a city. So what are the key differences in rural and urban markets that we need to understand, so that we can strategize our plans according to that particular requirement which we are facing in the rural area as compared to the urban markets. So if I am entering into a rural market, I must know that what are the differences in that market as compared to their urban counterparts. So we have to understand what are the key differences. So urban and rural markets, they have differences which are basically physical in nature, which are both physical in nature, and there are differences which are invisible. You can't see those differences, you have to feel them. They are largely social in nature, so you would find their nature to be entirely social. So there you can find them in terms of the social taboos, the social norms, the traditions, the customs, the do's and don'ts that you can find, but they are not drafted, they are not written on any piece of paper where you can simply go through and say that yes, this is a rural area and here the rules are this. They are invisible, but largely as I told you, it is social in nature. So it is very much wrong to believe which many marketers have been doing since very long, that they misunderstood this very aspect, that rural remains the poor cousins of urban. So there has been a long standing but a wrong belief that rural customers or rural people, they don't have that much of paying capacity as compared to their urban counterparts, and some of the marketers, they have committed this mistake of misunderstanding that a rural area remains the poor cousin of urban. That is not the reality nowadays. You can find the paymasters there also. You can find the number of villages nowadays which are somehow having huge number of population, which can be categorized under the category of paymasters, and they are much ahead, far ahead from that of their urban counterparts. Their paying capacity is very high. So the origin of urban actually lies in rural, and that is something which we need to understand, and we must believe in this. Otherwise, we may commit certain mistakes while formulating our strategies, and of course, the implementation is going to be very doubtful if the planning is not done properly. So, as I told you that the soul of India lives in its villages, Mahatma Gandhi's famous words from about 70 years ago, it still holds true for modern India. So, even in the modern India, still we believe that whatever Mahatma Gandhi said 70 years back, that still holds true even for the modern India. So, rural India is actually home to around 65% of the country's population. So, imagine more than 60% of your population resides in villages. So, how can we ignore as a marketer to this very chunk of market? Of course not. And that is why we are talking about rural marketing in rural India. That is why marketers of multinational companies, they are bound to think, plan and act in the rural areas, and they have to look at their needs, requirements, and they have to customize the products as per their need, want and their desires. So, the Reserve Bank of India actually defined rural areas in a different manner. There is a definition by RBI also. So, RBI defines rural areas as those with a population of less than 49,000, with agriculture as its cornerstone, which is the same as the census of India does. The rural economy contributes significantly to India's economic growth engine. This is what RBI believes, and while defining this definition of rural area, there are two conditions which are put. Number one is the number, that population of less than 49,000, and the agriculture as its cornerstone. So, this is the data which I could find from the website of Statista, where it is telling us about the rural and urban population, and one can very easily understand or track that this is the the population of rural as well as the urban India. So, rural India's population is, of course, it is visibly higher than that of urban India. So, out of this statistical analysis, some of the key insights I am going to present before you. So, if you ask me about the number of people living in rural India, it is 908.8 million people. They are residing in rural India as of now. So, the latest data which is published by Statista, which I have recently shown you in the form of a diagram, it indicates, it reflects that 908.8 million people are residing in rural India. If you ask me about the share of agriculture in rural employment, that how much is the share of agriculture in generating rural employment, it is more than 50%. It is roughly 60%, and the exact data is 59.8%. So, the largest or the biggest employment generating sector here is the agriculture. So, agriculture is actually providing employment to roughly 59.8% of the total population. If we talk about the annual rural inflation rate, it comes around 5%. If you ask me about the number of people employed, that is 17.07 million people, they have got employment in rural areas, that is in agriculture. Production value is 1083 billion. It is in terms of rupees, and 1083 billion rupees is the worth which it has created. Sales value is 1.5 trillion Indian rupee. Share of food items in consumption expenditure, this is very remarkable, share of food items in consumption expenditure is 46.3%. So rural India is spending, out of their total consumption expenditure, they are spending roughly 46.3% on food items. And this is the most significant one, and it is actually an eye opener for multinational companies who have actually been having a long standing wrong belief that the paymasters can only be found in metropolitan cities or cities, not in rural areas. Growth in rural super rich population is 14.2%. So roughly 14.2% of rural population is categorized under super rich category. So imagine, we can't ignore them. These are the paymasters who are residing in the villages, and they are leading a very healthy as well as the wealthier life. So average monthly income in the agriculture households, if we count, it comes to be 10.2 thousand, roughly 10,000 rupees per month is actually the average income of an agriculture household. It is an average one. And if we talk about here, we need to get reminded of what C.K. Prahalad talked in his book Fortune at the Bottom of Pyramid, where he actually emphasized that if multinational companies are willing to tap the Indian market, then of course rural India is something which they should prefer and they should target, because the fortune can be found at the bottom of pyramid, and in that pyramid the bottom is indicating the maximum number of people who are residing in rural India. So average monthly income may be less, but still we can't ignore the 14.2% of super rich population residing in those areas. So there is a rural consumption story which we have to understand, that what exactly is there in rural consumption pattern. What is the story inside those villages when we talk about their consumption patterns. So it is fueled by private consumption, and India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, which is actually fueled by the private consumption, and rural consumption is anticipated to continue being a brightest spot in the economy, because their consumption rate is of course very significant, very good, because the huge number of population is residing there. And if we have to look at their consumption pattern, the sale of two wheelers, tractors, which are key indicators of rural demand, because their demand, of course, that would give a reflection of the kind of work they are into, the kind of business they are into, and they are into the agri business, they are into the agriculture. So it looks very promising. While sales of fast moving consumer goods, if we look at FMCG, it has remained strong at the end of 2024, and this data I could find from IBEF, that is India Brand Equity Foundation. So the credit is given to that particular website, from where we have got this data, that this is what is there in terms of rural consumption story. So as per the household consumption expenditure survey, there is a survey which was conducted in the year 2024. The share of food items in rural India's average monthly per capita consumption expenditure increased as compared to the previous year. So there is an increment into the household consumption expenditure, and although the rural urban consumption gap has significantly reduced in the last decade, that is now shrinking, which is actually a good sign that the rural India is not less than that of their urban counterpart in any manner, in any of the aspects. But we have to understand that what is the difference there. In what manner the cost of living in rural India is different. We have been talking about the pinched pockets. We have been talking about the pocket which is actually pinched. So in 2024, while median salaries in businesses rose by over 9%, rural incomes experienced sluggish growth. It was not that high as compared to what in urban India we could witness. So it driving many towards self-employment. People have now been resorting to the self-employment there also, and this is actually in contrast with urban areas where salaried jobs are predominant. Because in urban areas, the most prominent mode for or the domain for earning their livelihood is salaried jobs which are there. which are there into the urban area and they are not present in the rural areas. So the demand for work under the government's rural employment initiative for unskilled labor, which is there in the name of Manrega, that is Mahatma Gandhi National Employment Guarantee Act, it remained higher in financial year 2025 than in the pre-COVID times. Because of course the pandemic of COVID-19 has had some impact on the livelihood of the people, and still they find that yes, under this scheme also there has been a huge demand as far as the demand for unskilled labor is concerned. So coming to the key characteristics of rural India, now we have to sum it up now so that we can talk about it from the perspective of rural marketing. So the first and the foremost characteristic is that rural India is very vast, that we all know, but it is scattered. The market comprises millions of consumers across hundreds of thousands of villages. So 6,50,000 villages, so of course the area is very large but very much scattered. The second trait is they are agriculture dependent. So rural income is heavily tied to agriculture. So prosperity is linked to their agricultural performance, which is largely, still it is largely based upon the monsoon, it is based upon the natural blessings. So this is another characteristics. Growing brand consciousness, and rural consumers show an increasing demand for branded products, and there is a diverse and uneven development. It is not very even. So there is significant variation in socio-economic conditions across different rural regions. So given these traits, we have to understand what are the growth drivers and what challenges we are going to witness as a marketer in the rural India. So the remaining part of this discussion I shall be continuing in the next very lecture of mine, and I hope I could give you the brief about what exactly we mean by rural marketing in rural India, and I had tried to provide you all the broad contours of rural marketing and rural India in this very lecture of mine. Thank you so much.